Hey all. Hey, since Charlie died a few days ago, been listening to more Stones. He was so great. He was just awesome. And maybe sometime we'll do a discussion of Charlie's playing. And I think the signature of his playing was his behind the beat style, which kind of gave the Stones their kind of slinky kind of raunchy feel. But for now, we'll stick to guitar. And I was listening to Dandelion the other day, which I think is an underrated tune. In fact, I like it a lot better than the flip side. I think the A side was We Love You and the B side was Dandelion. But Dandelion, in my mind, is the better track. Probably the last one or the tail end of when they were using that kind of Baroque instrumentation with harpsichords and stuff like that. Has that kind of feel to it, but kind of the tail end of when they were doing that. Now, we've talked about these deconstructing, and if you do a search for deconstructing Dandelion, Rolling Stones, you'll find it on YouTube. It's on there. And on that one, you can really hear a lot more of what's going on with the guitar. First off, you can really hear, okay, for the people who hate that I talk too much, tough, we're just going to talk for a second. But if you're a Stones fan, you probably have heard, or a Beatles fan, you probably heard that John and Paul are on Dandelion singing on it. But on the final version, man, you can't pick out Paul's voice in there. You know, it's just a little bit of a dense mix. But on the isolated tracks, you sure can. And in fact, I hear when it does the isolated vocal, the main vocal, it sounds to me like Paul is co-singing that lead line. It's not a harmony vocal. They're both singing the lead vocal together. So he's sort of co-singing it, sounds like to me. Then when they get to the harmonies, you can really hear John and Paul in those high harmonies. In fact, I'd go beyond that and say John and Paul probably arranged the harmonies because they sound so much like what the Beatles were doing around 67, 68, 69, and very different to what the Stones would have done left to their own devices. So it sounds to me like they had a lot more involvement in this than I would have imagined. But anyway, so when you hear the isolated tracks, we're 2.5 minutes in and I haven't even started the lesson. The acoustic guitar sounds like, now it's in B flat, the key of B flat. So surely Keith, or I assume it's Keith, whoever's on the acoustic guitar. I assume Keith because I think Brian was virtually done playing guitar by the time this came around. He was doing other instruments by then, for the most part. But so it sounds to me like maybe Keith, and a very kind of Keith strumming if you listen to the way he strums it. But there's no chance that he was playing it in with B flat shapes or anything like that. So it's capoed somehow, either tuned or capoed or whatever. My first thought, and I might have even posted a demo of it, was capo at 1 and do it with A to B. But hearing the isolated ones that you can hear a lot clearer, I think it's like this. Now, I'm doing it sounds to me like the acoustic guitar for the main, Dear Prince or Pauper, that part. He's just doubling what the keyboard is doing. A to A7. So I'm just doing that the easiest way you could possibly do it. I'm walking starting from the capo, the 12th fret on the D string. So 12, 10, 9, 7, 5, 4, 2, 0, A, chord, A7. But it's not just the D string. You hit a D and then hit an open G string after. Now, one of the reasons I think he's doing that, and again, I'm just doing it, there's other ways to finger it, but I'm doing it the easiest way possible. So usually, for the most part, the easiest way to do it is usually the right way, or the way that it was done. So I'm just going to do it like this. But one of the reasons why I think it's this is because you can hear it doing the open G string. And then sometimes he does the open B string. He skips over, does exactly the same thing walking down the D, but skips over the G string and goes to the B instead. Listen to that isolated track and sound it out for yourself and see if you agree. But that's what I'm hearing. So just starting up here. Into another verse, right? Does a few of those. Then G to E minor, and then C to A7. Right? So that's C to A7, then C to E7. A7, D7. It goes up to D7 on that. So it's A7 to E7, then A7 to, and then back again. The only thing that's different is at the very end. Then the chord keyboards are doing their thing, but I think it just ends on a G for the guitar part. That's what it sounds like to me. You may hear it differently, but I think this makes sense. Plus, I mean, G to E minor, C to A7. That's logical. That's in terms of songwriting, especially what the Stones were doing at the time. That sounds a lot more likely. Sounds a lot more reasonable. But another great tune, and from that period where it was kind of that weird transition period from to me, up until, in fact, up until Jumpin' Jack Flash. The Stones were a singles band, not really an album band. And then they were really high on singles through sort of Painted Black. And then you get Satanic Majesties. I mean, She's a Rainbow is a single. I don't know how big a hit it was. But it seems to me like they became an album band, ironically, with the Jumpin' Jack Flash single, which was not on Beggar's Banquet, tellingly, because they were still keeping singles separate from albums like the Beatles used to do that. But then from then on, the birth of the modern Stones, that they, in my opinion, that they've been really ever since, was Jumpin' Jack Flash, and that's kind of the template for what they became. But that Satanic Majesties was a weird transition period where they were not a psychedelic band, and they kind of did that album, which was I think has aged better than a lot of the stuff from 1967, but it didn't. Listening back to it now, it does feel like they were sort of trying to find their way through that psychedelic period, and then just sort of abandoned that and just said, let's be a blues rock band, and that's where they went with Beggar's Banquet and onward from there. So a neat little snapshot from that period of Satanic Majesties and We Love You. Even Child of the Moon is sort of psychedelic, even though that was on the flip side of Jack Flash. So they were still feeling their way in that period, trying to figure out what kind of band are we now, you know. And I think then when Brian died, it kind of when he left the band, or they kicked him out of the band, really was the final shove of shedding that old version of the Stones and becoming this other band, basically. A better band, in my opinion. Good luck.